Okay, so you want to understand how Netflix became worth hundreds of billions of dollars by charging people somewhere between $7 and $23 a month for movies. The logic sounds airtight. A lot of people pay a small amount every month. Add it up. Profit. Simple. Except it's not. Not even close. Netflix is generating $45.18 billion in annual revenue, running a 29.5% operating margin, and serving 278 million paid subscribers across 190 countries. And almost none of that is explained by people pay for Netflix. What's actually running underneath all of this is one of the most sophisticated subscription engines ever built. A machine that touches content strategy, cloud infrastructure, behavioral data, global pricing, and advertising all at once, all feeding each other. And the most interesting part, Netflix built it by systematically destroying the business it already had. Let's go through exactly how this works. Before you can understand what Netflix built, you have to understand what it replaced. And what it replaced was, by any modern standard, a genuinely punishing way to watch a movie. You drove to a store. You hoped the title you wanted wasn't already checked out, because physical shelf space was the only inventory model that existed. You rented it, you watched it, and then you paid the price if you forgot to return it on time, because late fees weren't a side revenue stream for Blockbuster. They were a primary one. In 2000, Blockbuster collected roughly $800 million in late fees alone. The business model was literally built on consumer inconvenience. Cable television wasn't much better. Linear programming meant someone else decided when you watched what. You paid a bundle for 40 channels you didn't want in order to access 3 that you did. Ad breaks were mandatory and interminable. The whole system was designed around the broadcaster's needs, not the viewers. This is the landscape Netflix entered. Not a healthy, efficient industry, a deeply friction-filled one, ripe for anyone who could figure out how to remove the inconvenience entirely. Netflix launched in 1997 as a DVD by-mail service. You go online, you build a queue of movies you want, they mail them from automated fulfillment centers in prepaid envelopes, you return them, they send the next one. No store, no late fees, no stockouts based on which shelf had room. Eliminating the late fee wasn't just a nice feature. It was a brand repositioning. It said, "We are not building a business on your forgetting, but here's what actually mattered about the DVD model. The part nobody focuses on. The subscription fee was collected up front before a single disc shipped. Netflix had your money before they fulfilled any service. That predictable, front-loaded cash flow gave them something most entertainment businesses never had: financial visibility. They could plan, they could invest, they could build automated distribution hubs and negotiate volume disc purchases knowing exactly how much recurring capital was coming in every month, and the subscriber queues were a goldmine. Every title someone added to their watch list was a data point. Millions of queues across millions of users created the earliest version of what would eventually become the most important recommendation engine in entertainment history. They were building the future of Netflix while still mailing out physical discs. In 2007, Netflix introduced streaming. This sounds obvious in retrospect. It was not obvious at the time. DVD by mail was profitable. It was growing. It worked. And Netflix's leadership looked at it and made a decision that most businesses refused to make. They began intentionally cannibalizing it. The logic was clean. Physical media had a ceiling. There was a hard limit to how many discs you could ship and how many subscribers you could serve. Digital streaming had no such ceiling. Once a title was digitized, the marginal cost of delivering it to the 10 millionth subscriber was essentially the same as delivering it to the first. But the transition was brutal. In 2011, Netflix tried to formally split the two businesses under separate brands. The DVD side would become Qwikster. The subscriber reaction was immediate and savage. Netflix lost 800,000 subscribers in a single quarter. The stock collapsed. Analysts declared the company finished. They reversed the Qwikster decision. But they did not reverse the underlying strategy. Streaming kept getting the investment. DVD kept getting phased out, until the physical service was permanently shut down in 2023. By absorbing that short-term disaster, Netflix arrived at the future before anyone could push it there. It had first-mover advantage in streaming, content licensing relationships at historically low rates, and technical infrastructure that competitors would spend years and billions trying to replicate. Here is the reframe that changes everything. Netflix does not sell movies. It does not sell TV shows. What it sells is a state of being, frictionless access to unlimited content, available instantly on any screen, without advertisements, personalized to your specific tastes, with no penalty for watching more or less. When you pay per title, the way you would on a digital storefront, every purchase involves a micro-decision. Is this worth $4? Is this worth $12? That friction slows consumption and makes customers acutely conscious of value. They calculate. They hesitate. Netflix eliminates that calculation entirely. You've already paid. There's no marginal cost to watching one more episode. So you do. Watch time goes up, engagement goes up, the platform becomes a habit rather than a transaction. And once something is a habit, sitting alongside your electricity bill and your internet service, canceling it feels like a disruption rather than a choice. That psychological repositioning is worth more to Netflix's business model than any single piece of content they've ever produced. Netflix's revenue architecture is more complex than it looks from the outside. The entry-level ad-supported plan runs at $6.99 to $7.99 per month in the United States. The standard ad-free plan sits at $50.50. The premium 4K plan goes up to $22.99, and in certain international markets, pricing reaches as high as $37 a month, calibrated to local purchasing power. Each tier serves a different economic function. The ad-supported tier is a dual revenue vehicle. Netflix collects the subscription fee and simultaneously sells programmatic advertising against viewing hours. The net revenue per user on an ad-supported subscriber can match or exceed the mid-tier ad-free plan, just from a different combination of income streams. The paid sharing initiative, launched aggressively in 2023, added another revenue layer. For years, Netflix had quietly tolerated account sharing, an estimated 100 million households accessing the platform without paying. When subscriber growth in mature markets started slowing, that tolerance ended. Using IP address tracking, Wi-Fi network telemetry, and device identification, Netflix began enforcing household boundaries. Non-household viewers were pushed to start their own subscriptions or get added as extra members at $2 to $9 per month. The result was a revenue re-acceleration that pushed annual growth rates back above 15% in both 2024 and 2025. The geography of that revenue. The United States and Canada generated $19.96 billion in 2025. Europe, the Middle East, and Africa added $14.51 billion. Latin America contributed $5.36 billion. Asia Pacific, the region with the most long-term growth potential, added $5.35 billion, $45.18 billion in total, up from $33.7 billion just 2 years earlier. Here is the math that actually runs Netflix's business. Take a subscriber paying $15.50 a month. Over 6 years, that's $1,116 in gross subscription revenue from a single account at near zero marginal cost to serve. No shipping, no inventory, no retail overhead. Just bits moving across a network already built. In subscription economics, there's a formula called customer lifetime value. LTV equals average monthly revenue per user multiplied by gross margin divided by monthly churn rate. When your gross margin is high and your churn is low, LTV becomes enormous. Netflix's operating margin hit 29.5% in 2025, and that margin expands as the subscriber base grows because the fixed costs of content amortization get distributed across more and more revenue. This is the core flywheel. More subscribers means higher margin means more cash means more content investment, better content means lower churn means LTV compounds. Every part of the machine feeds every other part, which is why a half-point reduction in monthly churn is worth more to Netflix's enterprise value than almost any other lever they can pull. Small changes in the denominator produce enormous changes in the output. Content is Netflix's largest single expenditure, by a significant margin. In a typical year, Netflix deploys between $13 and $17 billion in cash content spend. In 2021, the peak of post-pandemic production, that number hit $17.9 billion. In 2023, when Hollywood was shut down by simultaneous WGA and SAG-AFTRA labor strikes, it dropped to $13 billion. In 2024, with production back at full capacity, it rebounded to $17 billion. Understanding how this money moves through the financial statements requires one specific accounting concept. When Netflix funds a production, the cash goes out up front, during filming, during post-production, during the expensive months before a single frame is seen by a subscriber. On the income statement, that cost doesn't appear all at once. It's capitalized as a content asset on the balance sheet, then amortized, expensed gradually, over the title's useful life. The industry standard is an accelerated schedule where more than 90% of recognized value hits the income statement in the first 28 to 90 days after release. As the subscriber base grows, that fixed amortization expense gets divided across a larger revenue base, driving down the effective cost per viewing hour and expanding operating margins. This is why Netflix's content spending creates operating leverage rather than just expense. The content investment is not charity. It is the primary mechanism by which Netflix acquires and retains subscribers. A world without new Netflix originals is a world where millions of subscribers ask themselves every month whether this subscription is still worth keeping. And if this is the kind of breakdown you enjoy, this channel goes this deep on every major brand. Hit subscribe and leave a like if you're finding this valuable. It helps more people find the channel, and there's a lot more of this coming. In Netflix's early streaming years, the platform operated as a content licensor, paying Disney, Sony, Paramount, and Warner Brothers for the right to stream their libraries. The catalog filled up quickly and subscribers came, then something changed. Legacy media companies watched Netflix grow and they started doing the math. Every time a subscriber watched a Disney title on Netflix, the value was flowing to Netflix. So Disney, then Warner Brothers, then Paramount all made the same decision: launch proprietary streaming services and pull the content back home. Netflix saw this coming. In 2013, they released House of Cards, not as an experiment, but as a declaration. They were no longer just a distributor, they were a studio. Owning original intellectual property changes the entire financial structure. Licensed content comes with expiration dates, territorial restrictions, and ongoing licensing fees. Proprietary IP doesn't expire. It doesn't get pulled by a competing platform. A globally successful Netflix original can be distributed simultaneously in every country they operate in, without negotiating a single regional rights deal. And the secondary revenue streams all flow back to Netflix. Stranger Things merchandise. Wednesday's iconic dance becoming a global TikTok phenomenon that drove millions of new subscribers to the platform. Squid Game expanding from a streaming series into a live competition show, a gaming title, and a consumer products franchise. None of that value leaks out to a third-party studio. Netflix owns it entirely. Let's talk about where production money actually goes, because the numbers are extreme at the top end. Marquee series at Netflix can run $10 to $20 million per episode. Feature films can clear $200 million total. Understanding why requires breaking down the capital flows. Between 30 and 40% goes above the line. The creative leadership. A list cast salaries, showrunner deals, director fees, underlying IP acquisition. 40 to 50% goes below the line. Technical crew, set construction, physical production, and visual effects. The VFX budget alone on a high-concept fantasy or science fiction series can run into the tens of millions per episode. 10 to 15% covers post-production, editing, sound design, musical scoring, and 5 to 10% is insurance, completion bonds, and legal compliance. High production values aren't vanity. They are a global marketing asset. A visually spectacular series generates trailers, clips, and still imagery that travels across international markets in ways that mid-budget productions simply cannot. The visual card in the Netflix UI for a prestige production is the first thing a subscriber sees. It is the deciding factor in whether they press play, but high budgets carry enormous financial risk. Which brings us to how Netflix manages that risk. Netflix cancels shows, a lot of them, and viewers are, understandably, frequently furious about it. To understand the cancellation logic, you have to understand how Netflix actually evaluates performance. And it is nothing like traditional television. Traditional TV measured overnight ratings. How many people watch the premiere? Netflix measures something far more specific. The metric that determines renewal is the completion rate. The percentage of subscribers who started the first episode and watched through to the end of the season within a 28 or 90-day window. A show can rack up enormous total viewing hours and still get canceled. If 90% of the audience drops off after the second episode, the completion rate is catastrophic. And a second season for a show most people didn't finish has almost no chance of improving. Heartstopper, produced for roughly $2 to $3 million per episode, achieved a 73% season completion rate. Renewed because the efficiency was extraordinary. High engagement, low cost, long subscriber value. First Kill generated 97.6 million hours of total viewing in its first 4 weeks and was still canceled because only 43% of viewers who started it finished it. This is where portfolio theory comes in. Netflix greenlights a volume of productions across genres, languages, budgets, and formats, knowing most will be modest performers and a small number will become global phenomena. Squid Game, produced for approximately $21 million, generated an estimated $900 million in value within a month of release. One title like that pays for dozens of quiet cancellations. You cannot predict which productions will become cultural moments. So you create enough surface area that when one hits, it hits at a scale that covers everything else. Netflix is in 190 countries. That fact obscures something more important: how they actually get value out of being there. The real strategic insight came from a Korean drama called Squid Game, a 90% Korean language series made for a local audience with no globally recognized cast, became the most watched series in Netflix history in its first month, cracking the top 10 in over 90 countries simultaneously. That result reshaped Netflix's entire content approach. The thesis, authentically made, Culturally specific stories have enormous global appeal when the friction of discovery is eliminated. Dubbing and subtitling in over 30 languages transforms a Korean thriller or a Spanish mystery into a global asset, and there's a cost advantage on top of the audience reach. Producing a high-quality drama in South Korea, Spain, Germany, Brazil, or India costs significantly less than producing an equivalent series under Hollywood union rates. Netflix gets more hours of quality content per dollar by investing in non-American productions, then distributes that content across one platform, one recommendation engine, one infrastructure stack, serving identical titles to subscribers in Seoul and Sao Paulo and Stockholm simultaneously. The EMEA region generated $14.51 billion in 2025 revenue. Asia Pacific added $5.35 billion. Neither number exists without the local content strategy. Netflix's recommendation engine is not a feature. It is infrastructure. Its estimated annual value, measured in prevented cancellations and increased engagement, is over $1 billion. When you open Netflix, you are not seeing a catalog. You are seeing a page constructed specifically for your profile in real time, based on your viewing history, the genres you engage with, the shows you complete versus abandon, the time of day you watch, and the device you're watching on. The algorithm runs collaborative filtering, comparing your behavior to millions of users with similar taste profiles, and predicts which titles you're most likely to watch and finish. The thumbnail image you see for a given title isn't a fixed asset. It's dynamically selected from multiple available artworks based on your historical preferences. A subscriber who engages heavily with dramatic content sees a different image for the same film than a subscriber who watches mostly comedy. This personalization directly reduces churn. When a subscriber finishes a show they loved and immediately finds the next thing they want to watch, they don't think about canceling. The moment the platform starts feeling like a library of things you don't want, that's the cancellation moment. The algorithm exists to prevent that moment from ever arriving. Every time you press play on Netflix, something technically extraordinary happens, invisibly. Netflix runs on a dual-tier infrastructure. The cloud layer, built on Amazon Web Services, handles account management, billing, recommendation calculations, and master video encoding. But the actual delivery of video to your screen happens somewhere else entirely. In 2012, Netflix built a proprietary content delivery network called OpenConnect. Instead of sending video bits from central data centers across the open internet, Netflix physically places its own hardware appliances, OpenConnect appliances, inside internet service provider networks around the world. Over $1 billion of cumulative capital has gone into deploying 8,000 to 14,000 of these custom-built appliances across more than 1,000 ISP networks globally. During off-peak hours, Netflix proactively pushes anticipated popular content directly onto these local appliances. When you press play during peak hours, the video isn't crossing the global internet. It's coming from a server inside your ISP's local network. Netflix saved ISPs an estimated $1.25 billion in transit fees in 2021 alone, which is why ISPs accept the appliances at no cost. Netflix gets buffer-free 4K delivery, ISPs get dramatically reduced bandwidth overhead, and Netflix eliminates the middlemen who would otherwise charge per gigabyte beyond the CDN. Software engineering teams, customer support across time zones, payment processing in every currency, cybersecurity systems, co-located data centers, none of it free. All of it essential. None of it in the conversation when people discuss what Netflix actually spends. For years, Netflix's position on advertising was categorical. The company said it clearly and repeatedly, Netflix would never run ads. The subscription model was the product, no interruptions. Full stop, then subscriber growth slowed post-pandemic, growth in mature markets decelerated sharply. New subscribers in the United States and Western Europe were becoming harder and more expensive to acquire. In late 2022, Netflix reversed course and launched the standard with ads tier at $6.99 per month. The admission wasn't that the no ads philosophy was wrong. It was that the total addressable market for an ad-free only product had limits. And there were hundreds of millions of budget-conscious potential subscribers sitting just below the price threshold who needed a different entry point. The advertising tier created a second revenue engine. Netflix now collects a subscription fee and sells programmatic advertising against viewing hours at premium CPM rates, cost per mil, cost per thousand impressions. Ad formats include pre-roll and mid-roll placements, pause ads, and contextual sponsorship integrations. The net revenue per ad-supported subscriber can match or exceed the mid-tier ad-free plan. The tier expanded the addressable market without cannibalizing premium revenue. When Disney Plus launched in 2019, every major media company followed. Disney Plus, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, Apple TV Plus, Amazon Prime Video. All of them underpriced subscriptions to grab market share, all of them committed enormous content budgets, All of them bet that scale would eventually produce profitability. Most of them lost that bet. Disney's streaming division burned through billions in operating losses before reaching break-even. Warner Bros. Discovery reversed its content strategy multiple times, eventually licensing content back to Netflix rather than holding exclusivity. The aggressive spending across the industry inflated budgets for talent and production, driving costs up for everyone, including Netflix. But Netflix entered the streaming war from a position none of its competitors could match. A decade-plus head start in infrastructure. An OpenConnect CDN operating at a fraction of the per-stream cost of competitors relying on third-party delivery networks. A global subscriber base already calibrated on billions of hours of viewing data. While competitors were losing money to catch up, Netflix was expanding margins. From 20.6% operating margin in 2023 to 26.7% in 2024 to 29.5% in 2025, generating over $10 billion in annual operating income, while rivals were still calculating how many more years of losses they could sustain. The streaming war ended not with a decisive battle, but with a slow retrenchment. Legacy platforms cut content budgets, licensed their shows back to Netflix, raised prices to stop the bleeding, and began consolidating. Netflix expanded. Now that all the pieces are on the table, here is how the whole engine actually runs. As a loop, Netflix collects monthly subscription revenue upfront, across ad-free and ad-supported tiers, priced dynamically across 190 markets. That front-loaded cash flow funds a diversified content portfolio. Marquee originals, local language series, live events, documentaries, reality programming, and animation. Content assets are capitalized, then amortized against expanding revenue. Creating operating leverage that grows with scale, OpenConnect delivers every stream at near-zero marginal cost, eliminating the per-stream fees competitors pay to third-party CDN providers. The recommendation algorithm maximizes viewing hours and minimizes cancellations, ensuring subscriber lifetime value compounds over years. Paid sharing enforcement converts non-paying users into revenue-generating subscribers. The advertising tier expands the addressable market and adds a second revenue stream on top of subscription fees. The excess capital generated by this machine, $10 billion in 2025 operating income, gets reinvested into more content, more infrastructure, more markets, and more subscriber acquisition, which drives more revenue, which funds more investment. Operating margin at 29.5%. Net income at $10.98 billion in 2025. Every operational node feeds the next one. The flywheel turns faster as it gets bigger. Subscriber growth in the United States and Western Europe is maturing. The percentage of households that don't already have Netflix is shrinking, which means Netflix has to find growth elsewhere, and it's finding it in three directions simultaneously. Live programming is the most significant shift. 2024, Netflix broadcast NFL Christmas Day games. In 2025, WE Raw moved exclusively to the platform. Weekly live content that generates viewership spikes and commands premium advertising rates. A subscriber who watches live sports has a specific, time-sensitive reason to stay subscribed every week. That's a churn prevention mechanism on-demand content can't replicate. Mobile gaming is the second vector. Netflix has been building a library of mobile games included in the base subscription at no additional cost. Partly retention, partly IP deepening, keeping subscribers inside Netflix's universe between releases. Artificial intelligence is threading through all of it. AI-driven search, automated dubbing and localization, dynamic thumbnail generation. As Netflix's AI capabilities improve, the cost of serving global content should fall while personalization quality rises. And then there are the emerging markets. Southeast Asia, Africa, South Asia, enormous populations with rapidly growing smartphone penetration and low streaming market maturity. The same playbook Netflix ran in Latin America, now applied at even larger scale. Netflix's trajectory from DVD buy mail startup to $45 billion streaming engine offers structural insights that apply well beyond entertainment. The first, solve the actual pain point, not the surface version of it. The problem wasn't that people didn't have enough movies to watch. The problem was that accessing movies was inconvenient and punitive. Netflix removed the friction. The content came second. The second, cannibalize your own business before someone else does. Walking away from a profitable DVD business to chase unproven streaming was irrational by conventional metrics, and it was the single best decision the company ever made. The third, recurring revenue compounds in ways that transactional revenue doesn't. $1 collected this month from a subscriber who stays for 6 years is worth dramatically more than $1 from a one-time purchase. Build the model that keeps generating. The fourth, infrastructure is a moat. OpenConnect isn't glamorous, but replicating it takes years and billions, and by the time a competitor finishes building it, Netflix has already optimized further. The fifth, data is strategy. Every viewing decision a subscriber makes, press play, skip forward, abandon, rewatch, improves the recommendation engine, informs content strategy, and sharpens marketing. The platform gets smarter with every hour of viewing. That advantage compounds. So here's what you're actually looking at when you see the Netflix logo. Not a streaming service, not a content company, not a technology platform. What you're looking at is a recurring revenue engine that happens to express itself through movies and television. A machine built on subscription economics, behavioral data, proprietary infrastructure, and a global content library it owns outright and distributes to 278 million paying households at near zero marginal cost per stream. Every department reinforces every other. Every subscriber adds to the data that improves the algorithm, that improves the content decisions, that reduce churn, that funds more investment. The loop runs continuously, getting harder to compete with every year it turns. It didn't become one of the most valuable entertainment companies in the world by streaming movies. It became one by mastering the economics underneath them. Before we go, if you want to go even deeper on how businesses actually build sustainable models and make money at scale, I've put together a comprehensive business guide that covers exactly those frameworks. You'll find the link in the description and pinned in the first comment. Check it out when you get a chance. If you got value from this video, a like goes a long way, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Every video goes this deep, and there's a lot more coming. Thanks for watching.